Welcome back to this week's Parent Parsha series, Parashat Emor Bahar. As a little bit of a prelude to what I'm going to be speaking about at the Nishmat conference that is coming up this Sunday evening and through Wednesday. And so if you haven't heard about the Nishmat conference yet, you haven't registered for the Nishmat conference yet, I want to make a little plug to encourage everybody. There is something for everybody, and it's going to be a really extraordinary lineup of wonderful speakers with a wide range of topics. And I'm going to be speaking about body image with Yoetzet Halacha Lisa Septimus. We're speaking about that on Sunday night, but there's also a lot of TRM and Riverdale community members who are going to be speaking. Dr. Batsheva Lerner Maslow, Dr. Yardena Osband Glazer, Rachel Herkman, and of course our Yoetzet Halacha Rivka Alter. So I just want to make a big plug and encourage everybody to sign up for the Nishmat conference. It's going to be awesome. There are things for everybody across all time zones. But obviously my mind in preparation has really been thinking about body image. And sometimes sometimes my weeks have themes, particularly as it relates to client work that I'm doing. And one theme that definitely kept coming back to me was the notion of how do we do a better job at encouraging positive body image. And I think it's something that we've spoken about on this format and framework before. I think it's something that sometimes we often talk about specifically in relation to girls and women, but I really want to expand it and think about it in the ways in which we talk about it to all people, all genders, and also think about it from a different perspective that's not just about our bodies and really about the way in which we talk about other people. I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that there's something very real about the way in which we often naturally describe somebody. We might say, oh yeah, did you see that person over there? You know, the one who has this color hair or is this height. And so we naturally describe people by the way in which they look. And I think it's important to never make suggestions or to try to stay away from making suggestions that are so countercultural that they kind of almost feel impossible to uphold. But at the same time, holding ourselves to a higher standard about the way in which we use our words and the way in which we use our language to talk about ourselves and to talk about other people. Last week, we talked about trying to be nice to ourselves and being kind about the way in which we talk about our bodies. That was a couple weeks ago. Last week we talked about marriage. But I think that one thing that I think is so critical is that I always come back to the research that talks about the fact that our children pick up on, and the people around us pick up on very much the subtle day-to-day things that we do as it relates to all sorts of things and the way in which we talk about other people and other people's bodies and other people, the way that they eat food. All of these are things that are very critical and play a very important role in how kids are raised and how kids are developed in terms of their own thinking about the rules of food, or hopefully the not rules of food, or the ways in which people are supposed to look. And what does that mean supposed to look, or the way in which clothes are supposed to fit, and what does that mean supposed to fit? And really being mindful about the way in which language around food and body is used in our home on a day-to-day basis. And it actually happens to kind of integrate into this week's Parsha, which is chock full of lots and lots of mitzvot. In the sense that there's one pasuk in there that talks about the fact that you shouldn't say something bad about your friend. You shouldn't try to almost like blackmail your friend. And Rashi talks about, and Rav Amital kind of takes it one step further and basically talks about the fact that this is referring to not talking badly about other people, not trying to instigate other people, not trying to create situations in which you create jealousy amongst people. And Rav Amital points out that the Torah doesn't create a situation for us knowing that it's something that's so against our natural tendencies to do. So acknowledging the fact that we tend to talk about other people, and what does that mean for us that the Torah is telling us that we shouldn't be creating situations where this is ripe to happen. I think that what this can mean for ourselves is that we need to be creating environments in our homes, in our lives, where we try to the best of our capability to remember that everybody was created in the inspiration of Hashem. Everybody has different bodies, everybody looks differently, and really trying to think about the ways that we naturally talk about people in a way that is ayin tov, a good way, and really trying to move away from criticism, because I think that even if a criticism is subtle, it has the ability to be taken in a way that is extremely negative. And not only does that go into somebody's brain, but it also really creates a culture of how people talk in a home, how people talk in a community. And I think really being mindful to try to be authentic with the friendships that we have. I love this. Let's act like we're friends, but still talk bad about each other to other people. I think there's a difference between being concerned about somebody versus just for no good reason, looking at when you're with them smiling and whatever, and talking about them badly. Now, somebody could say, so what am I supposed to do? Be rude to that person all the time? And I would argue to think that, like, if there's a way for us to pause and actually think about an empathic way to relate to that person, where some people look for faults in others, like there's a reward for it. We're so quick to look and see what somebody else doesn't have instead of trying to really take a pause and try to find the good in it. And I think it relates to our bodies because I think that, first of all, one of the things that we're role modeling when we're trying to be empathic towards other people and trying to be down the chafschut is we're really setting an example for our values. And when we have a set of values that we are imparting and that we are creating an environment around, that becomes a much more powerful benchmark for how people evaluate themselves. And then it becomes things like negative body image, which happen to people from time to time. That's a normal thing. To say that it's not normal, to say that every time you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, you're like, oh my God, I look amazing, is really unrealistic and something that, again, it's so countercultural, it almost doesn't resonate. But instead, to remind ourselves that we are not the sole essence of what we look like in the mirror, and that more often than not, our reflection in the mirror is how we're feeling about ourselves in the moment, and that we're really thinking about all the ways in which we can take our bodies and ourselves and engage them in the world in a healthy way. I love this like little check mark, and I don't think it's something really that somebody could do every day, but I said at least one positive thing about my body to my child today. We didn't make fun of each other's bodies or other people. I didn't compliment someone's weight loss around my child. Maybe I didn't compliment someone's weight loss at all. I did what made me feel good, not what I was scared to do out of fear of judgment. I didn't look at myself in every reflective surface I passed. I think these are just really taking a pause to think about the ways in which our body preoccupies our sense of self, our sense of identity, because oftentimes when we're feeling good about ourselves, even if we're like, oh, I wish I put on a different outfit today, or I wish I had decided to do this, or I wish that didn't look like that, we'd be able to say, okay, our bodies aren't perfect. And I love these other parts of my body, and I love this other aspect, or like, it's okay, not every day it has to be my best look. And I'm able to go about the world and engage in a positive, meaningful way. And I think that we want to role model that to our children, and we want to really encourage a language of that helps them develop their own language, both internal and external. Okay, Parsha, Bahar, and Bechukotai. So I think that in theory, you would think this is a very difficult Parsha to come up with Parsha treats. However, in reality, I think it's actually not hard, because in this week's Parsha, which is a double Parsha, we also have a review of Shabbat, and we also have a review of all of the Chagim. So you can do matzah balls if you always do matzah balls. That's a check, that's a win, because that's matzah. You could also, if you have any leftover matzah, I thought this was so easy and kind of simple, you could make a very what looks to me not so hard, very delicate decoration for your table using matzah. This was an idea that we had earlier, which was to use sheaves of wheat and wrap them up for the Omer. You could do mountains. For Bahar, we also have in this week's Parshat Ayin Tachat Ayin, Shein Tachat Shein. So you could do eye cookies. You could also do like any type of like gummy vampires. So if you get on this pretty early, I actually took this picture from O Nuts, so you might even be able to have it delivered in time if that is something that is good for you. I think there's so many things you could do. It happens to be that we are not away this Shabbat, and so we actually got a little jump start on some of our Shabbat treats, and so we actually just did fun sugar cookies with all different things on them. So one kid made a circle with Shabbat on it and wrote out the letters Shabbat with candles for a cookie, and somebody else did cups, sugar cookie cups for the 4 cups of Pesach. So there's lots of fun things that you could try for this week's Parsha, and it doesn't always have to be food related, it could be something else related. I didn't put it on here, but if you have any extra wheat hanging around, or if you happen to see one as you're walking down the street somewhere, you could do centerpieces of wheat. Again, there's lots of things in this week's parsha. There's also a lot of mishicha, a lot of olive oil. And if you didn't do, if you last week saw my little brownie mikvahs, and there's also a discussion in terms of when a person has to be tovel in the mikvah as a way of cleansing himself. So that is also an option that you could totally do. They were easy to make. You could make just like a Duncan Hines brownie mix, put them in muffin tins, and then kind of put a muffin liner around it. It makes a little well, and then bake it like that. And then after it's done, you could fill it with blue frosting. Not so hard, looks harder than it is. So can't wait to hear what you do. And maybe you'll get to see a little bit of what we did this week. Shabbat Shalom, and I hope it's a great rest of the week.